Hey Pisces, I need to share something with you today because the energy coming through in this reading is honestly fascinating. I've been sitting with these cards for a while now, and there's such a clear story unfolding about someone in your orbit and what they're about to experience this weekend. So let me just dive right in and walk you through what I'm seeing. I pulled the Four of Pentacles first, and honestly, this card stopped me in my tracks. When I see the Four of Pentacles, I'm immediately drawn to this person who has been holding on so tightly to their expectations, to their plans, to their version of how things were supposed to unfold. And I need you to understand something about this energy. This isn't just casual attachment. This is someone who has built an entire fortress around their desires, their wants, their perceived needs. They've been clutching onto this vision they had, this specific outcome they convinced themselves was inevitable. And they've refused to let any other possibility even enter their consciousness. The Four of Pentacles represents control, security, and possessiveness. But when it shows up in this context, it's revealing someone who has become so fixated on maintaining their grip that they've actually cut themselves off from the natural flow of life. Think about it like this. Imagine someone sitting in a room, arms wrapped tightly around a box, convinced that inside that box is everything they need for happiness. They won't open it, they won't put it down, they won't even consider that maybe what they're holding on to so desperately might not be what they think it is. That's the energy here. And here's what really gets me about this situation. This person has been operating from a place of such intense fear, disguised as determination. They looked at you, they looked at a situation involving you, and they decided exactly how it would play out. They wrote the script in their mind. They cast all the characters. They predetermined every scene, and in their version of events, they were in complete control. They had the power. They had the upper hand. They had you figured out, or so they believed. But what they didn't account for was that life doesn't work that way. You can't script reality. You can't force outcomes through sheer willpower when those outcomes aren't aligned with what's actually meant to happen. And this person has been pouring so much energy into maintaining their illusion of control that they've become rigid, inflexible, stuck in patterns that were never going to serve them long term. The Four of Pentacles is showing me someone who has been financially, emotionally, or energetically hoarding. They've been keeping their cards close to their chest, refusing to be vulnerable, refusing to be genuine, refusing to show up authentically because they were too busy trying to manipulate circumstances to match their blueprint. And Pisces, I know you've felt this. You've sensed the inauthenticity. You've picked up on the fact that this person has been performing rather than being real with you. What's really interesting is that the Four of Pentacles often appears when someone is about to lose their grip, precisely because they've been holding on too tightly. It's like when you try to hold water in your closed fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. This person has been squeezing so hard, and they're about to discover that everything they thought they had secured is actually slipping away. This weekend coming up, something is going to crack in their carefully constructed reality. They're going to face a moment, an event, a revelation that directly contradicts everything they convinced themselves would happen. And the disappointment they're about to experience isn't just mild frustration. This is the kind of disappointment that shakes someone's foundation because it forces them to confront the fact that they were never in control to begin with. I'm seeing this person having conversations in their head where they already decided how you would respond to them. They already determined what you would say, how you would act, what role you would play in their narrative. They built up this entire fantasy where they were the director and you were following their script. And the reality check coming for them this weekend is going to be intense because you haven't been following their script at all. You've been living your own truth, walking your own path, making your own choices that had absolutely nothing to do with their expectations. The level of presumption here is actually staggering when you look at it clearly. This person really believed they had you figured out. They really thought they knew what buttons to push, what strings to pull, what moves to make to get the outcome they wanted. And every single assumption they made was built on a foundation of ego, rather than genuine understanding. They never took the time to actually know you, to understand your true nature, to recognize the depth of your intuition and your ability to see through surface-level manipulation. Now let me pull the next card, because this story needs to continue. I'm getting the Death card, and before anyone panics, we all know death in tarot is about transformation and endings, not physical death. But in this context, oh Pisces, this card is powerful. Death represents the complete dismantling of old structures, the inevitable ending of cycles that have run their course, the transformation that cannot be stopped no matter how much someone might resist it. When death shows up following the Four of Pentacles, what I'm seeing is that this person's grip is not just loosening, it's being completely pried open by forces beyond their control. The universe is basically saying, you've held on to this false reality long enough. It's time for it to die so something true can be born. And for this person, that's terrifying because their entire sense of security has been tied up in their ability to control outcomes. The Death card is revealing that everything this person built their hopes on, every strategy they employed, every manipulation they attempted, all of it is coming to an end. Not gradually, not gently, but with the kind of finality that leaves no room for denial. This weekend is marking a death of their illusions about you, about the situation, about their own power in this dynamic. And death of illusions is one of the most painful experiences a person can go through because it requires them to grieve not just what they lost, but what they never actually had in the first place. What makes this particularly intense is that death doesn't ask permission. Death doesn't wait until you're ready. Death comes when it's time, and it clears away everything that isn't authentic, everything that isn't built on truth, everything that was sustained through force rather than genuine connection. This person is about to experience the death of their fantasy version of reality, and with it, the death of the version of themselves that believed they could control you or the situation. I'm seeing this person going through stages of grief this weekend and beyond. First comes denial. They're going to try to tell themselves that what's happening isn't really happening, that it's temporary, that they can still turn things around if they just try harder or manipulate better. But death energy doesn't allow for that denial to last long. The truth is going to be so undeniable that they'll have to move past that initial resistance. Then comes anger. And Pisces? This is where the reading gets really interesting because the anger is already building in them. The theme mentions that their anger grows each day, and that's exactly what I'm picking up. But here's the thing about this anger. It's not really directed at you, even though they might try to project it onto you. This is anger at themselves for being so blind, for investing so much into something that was never going to work out the way they imagined, for losing control of a situation they never actually controlled. The Death card shows someone dressed in armor riding a white horse, carrying a black flag with a white rose. That symbolism is so important here. The armor represents the defensive walls this person built. The white horse represents purity and the truth that cannot be denied. The black flag with the white rose shows that even in endings, there is beauty and the seed of new beginnings. But for this person, all they're going to see initially is the ending. They're not yet ready to recognize the beauty or the potential for rebirth because they're too caught up in mourning what they're losing. What's really significant is that death is card 14 in the major arcana, and 14 reduces to 5 in numerology, which is the number of change and upheaval. This person is entering a complete life restructuring, and it's starting this weekend with this disappointment that catalyzes everything. They thought they had everything figured out, and instead, they're discovering they understood nothing at all. The transformation the Death card brings is necessary, though. Even though it's painful for this person, even though they're going through intense difficulty, this is actually the universe doing them a favor in the long run. Because living in delusion, operating from manipulation, trying to control what cannot be controlled, that's not a sustainable way to exist. At some point, reality has to break through, and when it does, it creates an opportunity for genuine growth if the person is willing to do the work. But I'm not seeing this person being ready for that growth yet. Right now, they're going to be stuck in the suffering of the transformation without understanding its purpose. They're going to feel like victims of circumstances rather than recognizing that they created this situation through their own actions and choices. The lack of accountability is going to prolong their pain because instead of looking inward and recognizing their role in this disappointment, they're going to look outward and try to blame everyone and everything else. Let me move to the next card because there's more to uncover here. I pulled the 9 of Wands, and this card is so telling about where this person has been mentally and emotionally leading up to this weekend. The 9 of Wands shows someone who is battle-weary, defensive, paranoid, and exhausted from fighting battles that mostly exist in their own mind. This person has been in a state of hypervigilance, constantly on guard, constantly strategizing, constantly trying to stay one step ahead. But here's what's fascinating about the 9 of Wands in this reading. All that fighting, all that defending, all that strategic maneuvering was based on their own fear and insecurity. They've been fighting shadows, Pisces. They created enemies where none existed. They prepared for battles that didn't need to happen. They exhausted themselves defending against threats that were largely their own projections. The 9 of Wands typically appears when someone is almost at the end of a challenging cycle, but they're too tired and too defensive to see that relief is near if they would just let go and stop fighting. For this person, though, they've misidentified what they're fighting for. They thought they were fighting to win you over, to maintain control, to achieve their desired outcome. But what they were actually fighting was reality itself, and that's a battle no one ever wins. This card is showing me someone who has been running scenarios constantly in their head. They've been preparing speeches they'll never give. They've been planning confrontations that will never happen. They've been rehearsing victories that aren't coming. All of this mental energy has been spent trying to control an outcome that was never theirs to control. And the exhaustion from this is part of what's going to make this weekend's disappointment hit so hard. When you're already depleted, when you're already running on empty, when you're already stretched to your absolute limit, that's when reality checks hurt the most. And this person has been operating in survival mode for so long, constantly on edge, constantly defensive, constantly preparing for the next move in their chess game, that they have no reserves left to handle what's about to happen. The 9 of Wands also speaks to this person's stubbornness. Even though they're exhausted, even though deep down they probably sense that their approach isn't working, they keep pushing. They keep trying the same strategies. They keep defending the same positions. They refuse to admit defeat or change course because that would require acknowledging that they were wrong. And their ego can't handle that level of humility right now. What I'm picking up is that this person has been telling themselves that persistence will pay off. That if they just keep pushing, keep fighting, keep trying to force their will onto the situation, eventually they'll break through and get what they want. But the 9 of Wands appearing here is actually a warning that their persistence has become stubbornness, their determination has become desperation, and their fight has become futile. This weekend is going to be the moment when all that fighting, all that strategizing, all that energy expenditure reveals itself to have been for nothing. The outcome they were battling toward isn't going to materialize. The control they thought they were maintaining is going to be shown as an illusion. And the disappointment from that realization is going to hit them like a wave because they invested so much into a reality that simply wasn't real. The 9 of Wands is the penultimate card in the Wand suit, which means it comes right before the 10 of Wands, the card of overwhelming burden and collapse under the weight of too much responsibility or too many battles. This person is right on the edge of complete burnout, and this weekend's events are going to push them over that edge into a space where they simply can't keep fighting anymore because they'll have nothing left to fight with. Let me continue with the 7 of Swords, because this card reveals so much about this person's approach and why their disappointment this weekend is actually karmic justice in action. The 7 of Swords is the card of deception, sneakiness, strategy that borders on manipulation, and taking what doesn't belong to you through clever means rather than honest effort. When I see the Seven of Swords in this reading, I'm immediately picking up on the fact that this person has not been operating with integrity. They've been cutting corners. They've been manipulating situations. They've been telling half-truths or crafting narratives that serve their purposes. They've been trying to sneak their way into outcomes rather than earning them authentically. The traditional imagery of the Seven of Swords shows a figure sneaking away from a military camp, carrying 5 swords while leaving 2 behind. The symbolism here is about taking what you can get through cunning rather than through proper channels. It's about being strategic to the point of being dishonest. It's about creating advantages for yourself through methods that wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. This person has been playing games with you, Pisces. They've been operating with hidden agendas. They've said one thing while meaning another. They've presented themselves in ways that weren't genuine because they thought that's what they needed to do to get what they wanted from you or from the situation. They've been more concerned with winning than with being real. And here's the thing about Seven of Swords energy. It might work temporarily. You might be able to manipulate your way into short-term gains. You might be able to deceive people for a while. But it's not sustainable. Eventually the truth comes out. Eventually people see through the facade. Eventually the house of cards collapses because it was never built on a solid foundation of authenticity and integrity. What's about to happen this weekend is that this person's strategies are going to fail spectacularly. The cleverness they relied on is going to backfire. The manipulations they thought were so subtle are going to be revealed as obvious and desperate. The advantage they thought they had created is going to dissolve because you, Pisces, you saw through it all along. This is something I really want you to understand. Your intuition has been spot on throughout this entire situation. You've sensed the inauthenticity. You've picked up on the manipulation. You've felt when something didn't add up or when someone's words didn't match their energy. And even if you didn't always act on those intuitions immediately, even if you gave this person chances or the benefit of the doubt, your inner knowing never wavered. The Seven of Swords person always underestimates others. They assume that because they're being clever and strategic, no one else is aware enough to see what's happening. They believe their own hype. They think they're the smartest person in the room. And that arrogance is part of what leads to their downfall because they don't account for the fact that you've been aware the whole time. This weekend, when their disappointment hits, part of what's going to sting so badly is the realization that you were never fooled. They're going to understand that all their strategy, all their manipulation, all their carefully crafted approaches were transparent to you. They thought they were playing chess while you could see the whole board. And that's a humbling realization for someone who prided themselves on being clever and strategic. The anger that's building in this person day by day is partially anger at themselves for not being as smart as they thought they were. It's frustration that their tactics didn't work. It's rage that they invested so much energy into strategies that ultimately failed. And this weekend is going to be the tipping point where all that accumulated anger comes to a head because they can no longer deny that their approach has been completely ineffective. Moving forward to the next card, I pulled the Six of Wands, and this is where the reading takes a really interesting turn because the Six of Wands is traditionally a card of victory, recognition, and success. But in this context, what I'm seeing is that this card represents what this person expected to happen. This was their vision. This was the outcome they were so sure was coming. The Six of Wands shows someone riding through town on a horse, being celebrated and recognized for their achievements. It's about public victory, about being acknowledged as a winner, about receiving praise and admiration. This person imagined themselves in that position. They saw themselves winning you over, succeeding in their pursuit, being recognized as worthy or chosen or special in your eyes. They built up this entire fantasy where they were the victor in this situation. Where you would eventually see things their way, come around to their perspective, acknowledge them in the way they wanted to be acknowledged. They imagined scenarios where they proved themselves to you, where they won your attention or affection or respect, where they got to celebrate having achieved what they set out to achieve. But here's the harsh truth that this weekend is going to reveal to them. That victory was never real. It only existed in their imagination. They were celebrating a win that hadn't happened, counting chickens before they hatched, measuring the drapes in a house they didn't own. The Six of Wands in this position represents the massive gap between their expectations and reality. What makes this disappointment so profound is that they were so convinced of their eventual success. They didn't just hope for it, they assumed it. They took it as a given. They operated as if the outcome was already determined and they just needed to go through the motions to get there. And when you're that certain of something, when you've already emotionally invested in the celebration before the actual victory, the fall is that much harder. This person has been living in a future fantasy where they got what they wanted. They've been experiencing the emotions of success prematurely. They've been feeling triumphant over something that hadn't happened yet. And this weekend is going to crash them back down to present reality, where none of that fantasy has any bearing on what's actually occurring. The Six of Wands appearing here is showing me that this person's disappointment isn't just about things not working out. It's about the complete inversion of their expectations. They expected victory and they're getting defeat. They expected recognition and they're getting rejection or indifference. They expected to be celebrated and instead they're being humbled. The contrast between what they expected and what they're receiving is stark and painful. I'm also picking up that this person may have been cocky or arrogant in their certainty. They may have told others about their expected success. They may have bragged prematurely. They may have acted as if the outcome was already secured. And now, this weekend, they're going to have to face not just private disappointment, but potentially public embarrassment as their predictions fail to materialize. The Six of Wands can also represent ego investment, and this person's ego has been heavily invested in achieving their desired outcome with you or regarding you. Their sense of self-worth has become entangled with succeeding in this situation. So when the success doesn't come, when victory eludes them, it's not just a setback. It feels like a referendum on their value as a person, which makes the emotional impact even more intense. What they fail to understand is that real victory, real success, real recognition comes from authenticity, integrity, and genuine connection. You can't manipulate your way into the Six of Wands energy. You can't force someone to celebrate you. You can't trick your way into being genuinely valued. The recognition that matters comes from being truly seen and appreciated for who you really are, not for the persona you've crafted to get what you want. This person tried to shortcut the process. They tried to create the appearance of being worthy of the Six of Wands without doing the authentic work that genuine victory requires. And the universe doesn't reward inauthenticity with lasting success. You might be able to fake it temporarily, but eventually, the lack of substance becomes apparent. Let me pull the next card because we need to understand what's going to emerge from this disappointment. I drew the Two of Wands, and this card is about decision-making, planning, and standing at a crossroads. After this weekend's disappointment, after the crash of their expectations, this person is going to be forced into a position where they have to make real decisions about how to move forward. The Two of Wands shows a figure holding a globe, looking out over a landscape, contemplating which direction to take. One wand is held firmly, while another is mounted beside them. This represents having options, having choices, being in a position where the future is uncertain and requires intentional decision-making about which path to pursue. For this person, the Two of Wands arriving after all these cards of disappointment and failed strategy means they're going to be standing at a significant crossroads. They're going to have to decide whether to continue pursuing the same failed approach or whether to genuinely change direction. They're going to have to choose between learning from this experience or remaining stuck in their patterns. What I'm seeing, though, is that this person's ego is going to make the right choice difficult. The Two of Wands requires honest self-assessment. It requires looking at the landscape clearly and making decisions based on reality rather than on what you wish were true. And this person has been so invested in their distorted version of reality that seeing clearly is going to be a challenge for them. Part of what the Two of Wands represents is the planning phase before taking action. After this weekend's disappointment, this person is going to go into planning mode. They're going to start strategizing again about what to do next. But here's the danger. If they don't genuinely shift their perspective, if they don't learn from what just happened, they're just going to create new plans based on the same flawed thinking that got them into this mess. I'm picking up that this person might try to reframe this weekend's disappointment as just a temporary setback, rather than the wake-up call it's meant to be. They might tell themselves that they just need a better strategy, a different approach, a new angle to get what they want. They might double down on their goal rather than questioning whether that goal was appropriate or achievable in the first place. The Two of Wands is asking them to think bigger, to consider possibilities beyond their current narrow focus. But someone who has been as fixated and controlled as this person has been is going to struggle with expanding their vision. They've been staring at one specific outcome for so long that they've lost the ability to see the full landscape of possibilities available to them. What's interesting is that the Two of Wands appears early in the Wands suit, which is all about passion, will, and creative energy. This person is being given an opportunity to redirect their considerable will and determination towards something more authentic and aligned. But taking advantage of that opportunity requires humility, self-reflection, and a willingness to admit that they've been heading in the wrong direction. The globe the figure holds in the Two of Wands represents having the world at your fingertips, having vast potential and possibility. This person has so much potential if they would just stop trying to force one specific outcome and open themselves up to what could actually be right for them. But attachment to their expectations is blinding them to better possibilities. Next up, I pulled the Star, and this card is absolutely beautiful in terms of its energy. But in this reading's context, it represents something this person is going to struggle to access. The Star is about hope, healing, inspiration, and reconnecting with your authentic self and your place in the universe. It's about finding peace after the storm, rediscovering faith after disappointment. The Star appears after the Tower in the traditional tarot sequence, which tells us that it represents the healing and hope that becomes available after everything false has been destroyed. In this person's journey, they're going through their own Tower moment this weekend as their illusions crumble. The Star is showing what could come next if they're willing to do the inner work. But here's what I'm picking up. This person is going to have a hard time accessing the Star's energy because they're going to be so caught up in their anger and disappointment. The Star requires vulnerability, openness, and a willingness to heal, but someone who is feeling victimized and angry isn't in a space to receive that healing energy. The Star is one of the most peaceful and serene cards in the entire deck. It shows a figure kneeling by water, pouring cups back into the water and onto the land, with stars shining above. It's about flow, about giving and receiving, about being in harmony with natural rhythms rather than trying to control everything. Everything about the Star's energy is the opposite of how this person has been operating. For them to access the Star, they would need to let go of control, release their anger, forgive themselves and the situation, and open up to genuine healing. They would need to stop fighting reality and start working with it. They would need to trade their grip for flow, their manipulation for authenticity, their agenda for alignment with what's actually meant to be. The Star is whispering to them that there is hope beyond this disappointment, that there is healing available, that there is a path forward that would actually serve them. But they have to be willing to walk away from their old patterns to find it. They have to be willing to admit they were wrong. They have to be willing to genuinely transform rather than just regroup and try again with the same fundamental approach. I'm seeing that the Star represents the person this individual could become if they took this weekend's disappointment as a catalyst for real change. They could emerge from this more authentic, more aligned, more at peace with themselves and with reality. They could discover that letting go of control actually opens them up to something better than what they were trying to force. But transformation requires willingness, and right now, this person's willingness is questionable. They're more likely to stay stuck in their anger and their sense of being wronged than to do the vulnerable work of genuine healing. The Star is available to them, but they have to reach for it. And reaching for it means acknowledging their role in creating their own disappointment. Let me pull another card because I want to understand more about this person's inner state. I drew the Three of Pentacles, and this is really interesting because the Three of Pentacles is about collaboration, skill building, and working with others toward a common goal. In this reading, I'm seeing this card as highlighting what this person was not doing. The Three of Pentacles shows a craftsman working with architects or planners, everyone contributing their skills toward creating something together. It's about teamwork, mutual respect, recognizing that everyone brings value to the table. It's about being willing to learn from others, to take feedback, to adjust your approach based on collaborative input. This person has been operating in complete opposition to Three of Pentacles energy. Instead of collaborating, they've been trying to control. Instead of respecting your input and autonomy, they've been trying to override it. Instead of building something together with you, they've been trying to build something alone and force you into it. The Three of Pentacles requires humility because it means admitting you don't have all the answers and that other people's perspectives and contributions are valuable. This person's ego hasn't allowed for that humility. They've been so sure they knew best, so convinced their vision was the right one, that they never truly listened or considered that maybe their approach needed adjustment. In work situations, the Three of Pentacles appears when people are creating something beautiful together through combined effort and mutual respect. In relationship contexts, it speaks to partnerships where both people are valued, where both people's needs matter, where there's genuine give and take rather than one person trying to dominate or control. What I'm picking up is that if this person had approached you and the situation with Three of Pentacles energy from the beginning, if they had been genuine and collaborative and respectful, the outcome might have been different. Not necessarily the outcome they wanted, but at least an outcome built on truth and mutual respect, rather than manipulation and disappointment. The Three of Pentacles appearing in this reading is highlighting the road not taken. It's showing the approach this person could have chosen, but didn't. And part of their disappointment this weekend is going to stem from the dawning realization that their controlling approach was never going to work, that they sabotaged any real possibility of connection by refusing to engage authentically. This card is also about skill and mastery. And what it's revealing is that this person thought they were skilled at manipulation, at strategy, at getting what they wanted. But real skill in relationships isn't about control. Real mastery is about authentic connection, emotional intelligence, genuine empathy, and the ability to create space for mutual growth and understanding. They were applying the wrong skills to the situation. They were trying to be clever when they should have been trying to be real. They were strategizing when they should have been simply being present and honest. The Three of Pentacles is showing them that they fundamentally misunderstood what was required, and that misunderstanding is part of why nothing worked out as they expected. Now let me pull the Knight of Swords, because this card is going to tell us more about this person's mindset and how they're likely to react as this weekend unfolds and beyond. The Knight of Swords is all about rushing forward with intensity, being aggressive in pursuit of goals, charging ahead without necessarily thinking through the consequences, and having a sharp, cutting quality to your energy and communication. When I see the Knight of Swords in relation to this person, what I'm picking up is that their anger is going to manifest as aggressive thoughts and potentially aggressive communication. The Knight of Swords doesn't hold back. This knight charges forward, sword raised, ready for battle. And this person's mental state right now, and especially after this weekend's disappointment, is going to be combative. The Knight of Swords can represent someone who is intellectually sharp but emotionally immature. Someone who can articulate their thoughts clearly but lacks the wisdom to consider whether those thoughts should actually be expressed. Someone who values being right over being kind, who would rather win an argument than maintain a connection. This person is probably going to have a lot of angry thoughts after this weekend. They're going to mentally rehearse confrontations. They're going to compose messages in their head that they may or may not send. They're going to slice and dice the situation mentally, coming up with all the reasons they were wronged, all the ways they were misunderstood, all the arguments for why they deserved better. The Knight of Swords energy is fast and impulsive. This person might act on their anger without thinking it through. They might send messages they'll later regret. They might say things that burn bridges permanently. They might lash out in ways that reveal just how much they've been pretending to be calm or controlled this whole time. What's significant about the Knight of Swords is that while this knight is fast and fierce, this knight is also ultimately ineffective against certain types of challenges. You can't slash your way through emotional complexity. You can't argue your way into someone's heart. You can't force understanding through aggressive communication. The Knight of Swords tries to solve everything through direct confrontation and mental sharpness, but some situations require entirely different approaches. I'm seeing this person potentially trying to use words as weapons after this disappointment. They might try to hurt you verbally because they're hurting. They might attempt to make you feel guilty or responsible for their disappointment. They might craft narratives that paint themselves as victims and you as the villain. The Knight of Swords can be self-righteous, convinced of their own perspective, unable to see any viewpoint but their own. But here's what this person doesn't realize. Their anger, their sharp words, their aggressive energy, none of that is going to change the outcome. None of that is going to undo their disappointment. None of that is going to give them what they wanted. All it's going to do is further distance them from any possibility of genuine connection and reveal their true character in a way that validates every intuitive hit you've had about them. The Knight of Swords also represents impatience, and this person has been impatient throughout this entire situation. They've wanted results now. They've wanted you to respond on their timeline. They've wanted things to progress at the pace they determined. And when reality didn't comply with their timeline, when you didn't move at their speed, their frustration built and built until it's now manifesting as this anger that grows each day. Finally, let me pull the last card, the Six of Pentacles, because this card is going to show us the ultimate karmic energy at play in this situation. The Six of Pentacles is about balance, about giving and receiving, about karmic justice, and about the scales being balanced. In traditional imagery, the Six of Pentacles shows a wealthy figure giving coins to people in need while holding scales in the other hand. It represents charity, generosity, but also the balancing of karmic scales. What you give comes back to you. What you put out into the world returns. Energy seeking equilibrium. In this reading, the Six of Pentacles is revealing that this person is now on the receiving end of the energy they've been putting out. They've been withholding authenticity, so they're receiving disappointment. They've been manipulative, so they're receiving the natural consequences of manipulation, which is failure and disconnection. They've been trying to take what wasn't freely given, so they're experiencing the emptiness of getting nothing at all. The Six of Pentacles is a card of karma in action. Not karma as punishment, but karma as natural consequence, as the universe maintaining balance. This person created imbalance through their actions and approaches. They tried to take more than they gave. They tried to receive without earning. They tried to get something for nothing by using manipulation instead of genuine exchange. And now the scales are balancing. The Six of Pentacles is showing that this weekend's disappointment, the growing anger, the failed expectations, all of it is the universe's way of restoring balance. They get back what they put in. They invested manipulation, control, and inauthenticity, and so they're receiving the natural return on that investment, which is disappointment, frustration, and failure. What's really interesting about the Six of Pentacles is that it's ultimately a positive card because it shows the universe is fair. The scales do balance. You do reap what you sow. And while that might feel harsh for this person right now, it's actually a sign that universal law is working exactly as it should. No one gets away with manipulation forever. No one maintains control indefinitely. Reality always reasserts itself. The Six of Pentacles is also offering this person a teaching moment if they're willing to receive it. The lesson is about genuine exchange, about authentic giving and receiving, about operating with integrity so that what comes back to you is positive rather than negative. But again, receiving that lesson requires humility and self-reflection, and this person may not be ready for that yet. For you, Pisces, the Six of Pentacles is affirming that you don't need to do anything. You don't need to take action. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to explain anything to this person. The universe is handling the balancing. Karma is working. The scales are adjusting naturally. All you need to do is continue being authentic, continue trusting your intuition, continue walking your path, and trust that what's meant for you will come to you through genuine channels, not through force or manipulation. So let me bring all of this together for you, Pisces. This weekend is going to be a turning point for this person in your orbit, but it's a turning point born from their own choices and their own refusal to operate authentically. They built an entire fantasy based on control and manipulation, and reality is about to shatter that fantasy completely. The Four of Pentacles showed us their desperate grip on expectations that were never rooted in truth. Death revealed the complete ending of their illusions. The Nine of Wands exposed their exhaustion from fighting battles they created in their own mind. The Seven of Swords highlighted their manipulative tactics that were never going to succeed. The Six of Wands represented the victory they were so sure would be theirs, but that only existed in their imagination. The Two of Wands shows them standing at a crossroads after this disappointment, forced to make real decisions about their path forward. The Star whispered about healing that's available, but that they'll struggle to access because of their anger and resistance. The Three of Pentacles revealed the collaborative, authentic approach they could have taken, but chose not to. The Knight of Swords showed us the aggressive, combative energy that's going to emerge as their anger grows. And the Six of Pentacles confirmed that karmic balance is being restored, that they're receiving the natural consequences of the energy they put out. This weekend, something specific is going to happen that makes it undeniably clear to this person that nothing is unfolding according to their script. Maybe they were expecting communication from you that doesn't come. Maybe they were anticipating a certain response or reaction that they don't get. Maybe they were sure a situation would resolve in their favor, and it resolves in a completely different direction. Whatever the specific trigger is, it's going to hit them hard because they were so convinced of their expected outcome. And here's what you need to understand about their growing anger. It's not really about you, even though they might direct it toward you in their mind or even in their words. Their anger is about their own powerlessness being revealed to them. Their anger is about having to face the fact that they wasted time and energy on strategies that were doomed to fail from the beginning. Their anger is about ego injury, about having to admit they weren't as clever or in control as they believed themselves to be. People who operate from manipulation and control tend to have the hardest time when reality doesn't bend to their will because their entire sense of self is tied up in their ability to orchestrate outcomes. When those outcomes don't materialize, when control slips away, when manipulation fails, they experience it as a fundamental threat to their identity. And that's terrifying for them, which is why the anger grows and intensifies. But Pisces, I want you to really hear this. None of this is your responsibility. None of this requires your intervention, your explanation, your defense, or your emotional labor. This person created their own disappointment by refusing to engage with reality as it actually is. They built their expectations on sand, and now they're surprised that the foundation is crumbling. That's on them, not on you. Your intuition has been guiding you correctly throughout this entire situation. Every moment when you felt something was off, you were right. Every time you sensed inauthenticity, you were picking up on truth. Every instinct that told you to maintain your boundaries, to not give in to pressure, to stay true to yourself, those instincts were protecting you from getting tangled up in this person's dysfunction. What's going to be important for you moving forward is to not absorb this person's anger or disappointment as if it's something you caused. You didn't cause this. You existed authentically. You honored your truth. You followed your path. This person's disappointment stems from their own unrealistic expectations, and their own refusal to accept reality, and that has nothing to do with you failing them in any way. If this person reaches out to you with anger or blame or attempts to make you feel guilty for their disappointment, remember that you're seeing the Knight of Swords energy playing out. You're witnessing someone lashing out because they're in pain and they don't have the emotional maturity to take responsibility for their own choices. You don't have to engage with that energy. You don't have to defend yourself against accusations that aren't rooted in truth. You can simply witness their struggle from a distance and continue focusing on your own journey. The Six of Pentacles energy promises you that karma is handling this situation perfectly. The universe sees everything. The scales are balancing. You don't have to be the instrument of karma or justice. You don't have to make sure this person learns their lesson. The natural consequences of their choices are unfolding exactly as they're meant to, and your role is simply to stay in your truth and trust the process. Something I'm also picking up for you specifically, Pisces, is that this situation has been a test of your boundaries and your ability to trust yourself even when someone else is trying to convince you of a different reality. You're one of the most empathetic and compassionate signs in the zodiac. And sometimes that empathy can make you question yourself when someone else is insistent about their perspective. But this situation has been teaching you that compassion doesn't mean absorbing other people's distortions. Empathy doesn't mean sacrificing your truth to make someone else comfortable. Kindness doesn't mean allowing yourself to be manipulated or controlled. You can be soft-hearted and still maintain firm boundaries. You can care about others and still prioritize your own well-being and authenticity. This person's disappointment this weekend is actually going to reinforce for you that you made the right choices all along. Every time you listen to your intuition instead of their words, you were choosing truth over manipulation. Every time you maintained your boundaries instead of giving in to pressure, you were honoring yourself. Every time you stayed true to your path instead of following their script, you were aligning with what's actually right for you. And I want you to recognize something really important. The fact that this person's plans are falling apart. The fact that their expectations are being demolished. The fact that nothing turned out as they expected. All of that is actually confirmation that you were never meant to play the role they assigned you in their narrative. You were never meant to follow their script. You were never meant to fulfill their fantasy. The universe has your back, Pisces. The universe has been protecting you from getting entangled in something that would not have served your highest good. Even if this person had succeeded in their manipulation, even if they had gotten you to respond the way they wanted, it would have been built on a false foundation and eventually would have crumbled anyway. Better that it crumbles now, before you invested any more energy into it, than later after you'd compromised your truth. As this weekend unfolds and you potentially witness or hear about this person's disappointment and growing anger, I want you to practice compassionate detachment. You can have compassion for the fact that they're struggling without taking on responsibility for their struggle. You can recognize that they're in pain without feeling obligated to fix that pain. You can observe their process without getting pulled into their drama. Compassionate detachment is one of Pisces' most powerful skills when you consciously develop it. It allows you to maintain your empathetic nature while not drowning in other people's emotional chaos. It lets you care about people's well-being while not sacrificing your own peace to manage their feelings. It enables you to witness suffering without becoming entangled in it. This situation is also clearing space in your life and your energy field. Every situation that's not aligned with your truth needs to fall away to make room for what is aligned. This person's disappointment, their anger, their realization that things didn't work out, all of that is part of the clearing process. Old patterns, unhealthy dynamics, inauthentic connections, they all need to be released so that something better can enter. And something better is coming for you, Pisces. When you honor your truth, when you trust your intuition, when you maintain your boundaries, you align yourself with people and situations that resonate with your authentic frequency. You attract connections that are built on genuine mutual respect rather than manipulation. You open yourself to experiences that nourish your soul rather than drain your energy. The Six of Pentacles promises that you will receive in proportion to what you give, and you've been giving authenticity, honesty, and integrity. That's what's going to come back to you. Not immediately, perhaps, not in the specific forms you might expect, but the universe always rewards genuine alignment. You're going to attract people and opportunities that match your authentic frequency because you've refused to compromise that authenticity even under pressure. I'm also seeing that this situation has been teaching you about your own power in a really important way. Sometimes we think of power as the ability to control outcomes or influence others, but real power is the ability to stay true to yourself regardless of external pressure. Real power is trusting your intuition even when someone else is telling you a different story. Real power is maintaining your boundaries even when doing so disappoints someone else. You've been exercising real power throughout this situation, even if it hasn't always felt powerful. Every time you chose truth over convenience, every time you honored your knowing over someone else's manipulation, every time you stayed aligned with yourself rather than bending to someone else's agenda, you were demonstrating profound personal power. And that power is only growing stronger. This weekend, as this person experiences their disappointment, you might feel a range of emotions. You might feel relief that the situation is finally resolving. You might feel validation that your intuition was correct all along. You might feel sadness about the loss of what could have been if this person had approached things differently. You might feel anger about the manipulation you were subjected to. All of these feelings are valid, and you should allow yourself to feel them without judgment. But underneath whatever surface emotions arise, I want you to connect with the deeper knowing that you are exactly where you're meant to be. This situation unfolding the way it's unfolding is not a mistake. This person's plans falling apart is not a tragedy. This is divine orchestration ensuring that you remain on the path that serves your highest evolution. The universe is so much wiser than our human minds can comprehend. Sometimes what looks like disappointment or endings or things falling apart is actually protection, redirection, and clearing space for better alignment. This person's disappointment is their soul's way of telling them they were heading in the wrong direction. The fact that nothing turned out as they expected is life's way of course correcting them, even though they're too caught up in their ego to recognize that yet. For you, this weekend is an opportunity to reinforce your trust in yourself and in the universe. It's confirmation that when you stay true to your inner guidance, things work out for your benefit, even if the path looks different than you might have anticipated. It's validation that your intuition is a reliable compass, and that you can trust yourself to navigate complex situations with wisdom. As you move beyond this weekend and into the days and weeks that follow, continue honoring your boundaries. If this person tries to contact you with their anger or their disappointment or their attempts to make you feel responsible for how they're feeling, you have every right to not engage. You have every right to protect your peace. You have every right to maintain distance from energy that doesn't serve you. Remember that explaining yourself, defending yourself, or trying to make this person understand your perspective is not your job. They're not in a space to hear truth right now anyway. They're too caught up in their own pain and anger to be receptive to anything that doesn't validate their victim narrative. Engaging with them would be like trying to have a rational conversation with someone in the middle of an emotional storm. It's not productive, and it's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your own well-being, to your own continued growth and evolution. Your responsibility is to keep trusting your intuition, keep honoring your truth, keep walking your path with authenticity and integrity. Your responsibility is to learn from this situation what you need to learn and then to release it so it doesn't take up more space in your consciousness than it deserves. One of the most powerful things you can do moving forward is to use this experience to deepen your commitment to authenticity in all your relationships and interactions. Let this be a reminder that genuine connections are worth waiting for, that surface-level interactions that require you to compromise your truth are not worth your energy, and that your intuition is a gift that deserves your trust and respect. You're entering a new phase, Pisces. This situation clearing out is making space for that new phase to fully emerge. Stay open to what's coming. Stay committed to your truth. Stay connected to your intuition, and trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it's meant to for your highest good. The cards have spoken clearly today, and their message is one of validation for you and of karmic consequences for this person who tried to manipulate outcomes instead of honoring truth. This weekend marks a turning point, a moment of reckoning, a clarity that cannot be denied. And while it brings disappointment and anger for them, it brings freedom and validation for you. Trust the process, Pisces. Trust yourself. Trust that the universe has your back and is orchestrating everything perfectly. This person's disappointment is not your burden to carry. Their anger is not your responsibility to soothe. Their failed expectations are not your failure. You've done nothing wrong by being authentic, by trusting your intuition, by honoring your boundaries. Keep shining your light. Keep walking your path. Keep being beautifully, authentically you. The right people, situations, and opportunities will recognize and appreciate your genuine energy. And those are the only ones worth your time and heart anyway.